So when I had to do my first eviction and go to court, he was the guy I called. He talked me through it and told me that they never show up. So of course, my very first one, they showed up. But yeah, so he was somebody I definitely went to as a mentor. I think what I get most from networking is I have people to challenge my thinking.
Yeah.
And, and I have other people that have the same or similar goals.
Yeah.
When I worked a factory job, I would talk real estate all day long, and probably drive my coworkers nuts,
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have other people to talk to about it.
Hello, you're listening to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, presented by Brandon Elliott. This show will be going over all aspects of real estate investing and is intended to educate, motivate, and prepare you to take action on your first or next real estate investment. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Elliott. Today on the amazing show of Ready, Set, Go, we're very excited. We have a rock star over in the Indiana area in the Midwest that has been crushing it creatively. So I like to call him the creative king because definitely he stands out with, at one point, 64 units. He's downsizing a little bit at this point, kind of refixing his books to make it more presentable to banks, but he's at 54 right now, all creative financing, which is one of my favorite strategies. I mean, there's so many different strategies to really go after, but creative financing is something, very tremendous. A lot of people can get in with very little money down or none at all and make it still a win-win situation. So what I've noticed is when a lot of people out there, when they fail in real estate, they start off with plan A and then they kind of just jump to like plan Z when the problem occurs instead of going A, B, C. And just because they don't know all the different creative financing or strategies out there to be able to make it a better situation. So with that being said, very excited to have you on here, Brandon. What's going on, man? How are you?
Good morning, man. It's things are good. I've been making some changes, like you said. Sold 5 properties, a total of 9 units.
Okay.
I sold one a couple years ago. That's why there's a 10 discrepancy. But
yeah,
I sold 9 units recently with the intention of just paying off a bunch of personal debt and restructuring things, moving things around on the monopoly board to not only make things look better to the banks, but just to make life simpler as well.
I love it.
Yeah. Creative financing was kind of it was a strategy that came to me out of necessity. I was a factory worker. I was making like $14 an hour. So coming up with 25% down for a bunch of properties, just, it was never
not going to cut it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I can definitely relate. I mean, for a long time, I was working in the restaurant industry and I'm making minimum wage, working 2 jobs, trying to be able to support an income. Nevertheless, try to come up with a down payment. So I personally had to get creative as well. And I leveraged credit, personal lines of credit and business lines of credit with 0% interest for 18 months and so forth to be able to either purchase properties or every single remodel has been on credit. So I can definitely relate. And I think a lot of other listeners out there can as well. For anybody out there that doesn't know who you are, do you mind just diving into, first of all, I love the name, so I think we're already connecting here. For anybody that doesn't know who you are, do you mind just diving into who you are, where you're from, and what kind of business you are currently running?
Yeah. So I'm Brandon Hicks. I'm from Kendallville, Indiana. And at this point, I'm a full-time buy and hold real estate investor. I own and self-manage 54 units. Mostly small multifamily. I've got a 12 and 16 unit apartment complex, a bunch of duplexes, a handful of single family houses. And my next move, once all this stuff is, once I'm done moving things around on the board, as I like to say, I want to start getting into commercial investing, small multi-tenant retail, basically service-based or experience-based businesses in a retail building, I guess is the way I like to put it.
Like a mixed use?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to do some of that creatively as well, but more than likely we'll end up syndicating some deals, which is how you and I met.
Yeah.
We met at Ben Leibovich's syndication workshop.
That's right. Yeah. Now there's so many rock stars there. I think investing in yourself and really putting yourself in that atmosphere, there's a great amount of education, especially if you're going to the right events, but the networking is truly where it's at.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I love it. Let's talk about self-management for a second, because I do self-management as well, but my portfolio is a little bit less than yours. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, every time I tell them that I'm virtually doing self-manage my properties, they can't wrap their heads around it. So I didn't even realize how special it was, but I'm sure you can relate. Whenever you tell somebody, they're probably like, how the hell are you doing it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, even when I had 64 units, it was a snap. I mean, it's mostly paperwork. All of my properties are within a half-hour drive, so I can be there fairly quickly when I need to be. I do some of the physical work on turnovers. Okay. But the rest of it, once a tenant's in place, the ongoing maintenance stuff, I hire all that out. So I've got a couple of people that I go to for that. I do all my own leasing. Again, it's mostly paperwork, and I enjoy that side of it. I'm very organized. Good. So, technology helps a lot.
Yeah. Now, I think being organized is like the key ingredient to it. If you can be organized, put systems behind it, and really not procrastinate to the end of the week, but actually just keep up with it as you go, it's not going to back up, and everything will be pretty quick to grab if needed.
Absolutely. So your properties they're not in your backyard, right? You're investing afar, correct?
Yeah, mostly Ohio is where my portfolio is. We're in New York as well now, and then we're doing fix and flips locally here in San Diego as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that adds an extra element to it, but I can relate to that as well. I mean, I've had some fairly large issues come up, like water main breaks, a meter brace that dropped a leg, as they like to say. So, I mean, the meter base needed replaced. And I purposely tried to solve those problems without going to the property.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get some practice for when I buy stuff farther away. And it's doable, Yeah. You just have to rely on your contact base.
Yeah, no, I feel like they say that famous saying, real estate is definitely a relationship built business. Yep. I think a lot of businesses are, but in this particular situation, doing it virtually, it's 100%. It's all about me finding the right connections, people that I can know, like, and trust, and having them understand my vision, what I'm trying to accomplish as well. And they're just good people over there. So it really does work out. But I'm more of a control freak naturally. So I think it actually has helped me tremendously, because if I was very close to my properties, especially in the beginning, I would be there every day, most likely.
Yep. It's something I've struggled with as well. In the beginning, when I was buying stuff, because I was leveraging them 100% through seller financing with no down payments on most of them, the cash flow was fairly slim. Yeah. So hiring a management company was just not possible, and even looking at it, last year, when I had 64 units, my rent roll was sizable. I mean, hiring property management at 10% would have cost close to $40,000, and there's just not the cash flow there to justify that expense, Yeah.
No, I get it. Yeah. I mean, mine currently, it would be a little over $1,000, and my tenants just aren't that crazy. Like they're truly not that bad. They're all blessings. So the amount of work needed to cover $1,000 every single month, it just wouldn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't align currently.
Right. And at some point it might,
Of course. Yeah. And as I scale, I think it is very important for the listeners out there. If you're just getting started, you're always going to want to factor in property management, because as you scale, you're not going to be able to, and you're not going to want to, be locked down to having to actually play that role because, you didn't factor it into your budget.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that cash flow needs to be there, and you can just pay yourself in the meantime. So I do want to talk about creative financing in just a moment. But before that, do you mind, is there any tips that you have besides staying organized for any of the listeners if they are going to be doing self-management?
To me, it's a lot of common sense. I mean, treat people the way you'd want to be treated.
Yeah.
And I also like to say that, this is a business that I'm making a lot of money in, treating people better than a lot of them would treat me.
Yeah.
I don't go to the nth degree when there's some sort of issue and get upset about it.
Is there anything that you do in particular when it comes down to filling a vacancy?
One thing I do that saves me a lot of time is I will not show a unit to anybody without pre-screening their application.
Yep.
So I use a job form application before I just emailed everybody PDF applications. But with the job form app, they can fill it out from their phone. So there's no excuse for them to not get it to me pretty quick.
Okay.
And with my properties being a half hour away, that saves the number of trips I go out to show properties. I honestly, I would say that less than 10% of the time that I show an apartment, it's to somebody that I'm not signing a lease with, if that makes sense. I mean, 90% of the time when I go to show, we're signing a lease right then and there.
Yep. Yeah.
Already pre-approved them. They know what they're walking into.
I do the same thing. What would you say is like the number one thing when a prospective tenant calls you up for the very first time? Is there something that you hear on a regular basis?
So I don't take very many phone calls, I guess. I mean, most of it is through, I put my listings on Zillow Rental Manager.
Yeah.
So it gets blasted out to like Trulia and Hot Pads and so on. And then I also share them on Facebook through my business page, personal page, and then blast them out to the garage sale pages and so on when I have to advertise a vacancy. A lot of times I don't because I have people calling me all the time. But even though I just said I don't take a lot of phone calls. So most of the interest that I get on my rental listings is through either a Facebook post or through email, through Zillow. And I typically just keep a script in my phone, in my notes, and it's got some sort of canned response with a link to the application.
Yeah.
And they give me the application. I kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think over the years of doing it and on a regular basis, because I feel like I always have at least one vacancy around that I'm looking to fill. So at that point, I've kind of recited and know what to say next when dealing with the prospecting tenant. But I did come up with a script, and I put that in like some show notes a couple podcasts ago to help out other people, because I realize a lot of my friends that are really crushing it with real estate investing have actually been struggling with certain questions to ask, and they're wasting a lot of time by not pre-screening thoroughly up front.
Right.
Because it costs me money to show the property every time. And if it wasn't, then I would be giving my time if I was locally there.
Absolutely.
So, which is even more valuable in my opinion. So at the end of the day, just like you said, it's very important to actually screen thoroughly before you get to that position. I think the number one request, or when somebody is asking and calling for the very first time to ask about one of my properties, they're always asking like, hey, so when can I see it?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious because I'm like, whoa, let me figure out what your wants and needs are and see if this is even a good fit.
Exactly.
Because 9 times out of 10, it might not be. So it's kind of funny.
Right. Yeah. The first couple properties I had, I mean, anytime I'd have a vacancy, I would jump up and show it. And there'd be nights where I'd leave the house 5 times, to go show a house.
Yeah.
And it's just a huge time waste. When I bought the property in Angola, which is about 30 minutes north of me, it had a very bad reputation. It was very run down. It was kind of the place you go when you have nowhere else to go. So I would get a lot of very interesting applications and, horrible applications. I mean, multiple, drug charges, multiple evictions. I think I found one time where the couple had been arrested for beating each other with ball bats. So,
nice.
Why would I ever waste my time to go up and show them that apartment?
Yeah, especially tell them no in person.
Exactly, yeah. So you always want to pre-screen. That eliminates the people who are being evicted, immediately, right now. They're currently in eviction.
Yeah.
You catch all that stuff. You just save so much time, not showing apartments to people who aren't qualified for it. I won't say not a good fit, because that's up to them to decide if they're a good fit for the apartment from their standpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I feel like, it's only about 1 out of 10 showings where I don't sign a lease.
Okay.
Because I'm prepared to rent to them at that point. They have came to the property and found out that, hey, it's not a good fit for whatever reason.
Yeah. Now, what kind of software are you using for the application process?
Just JotForm. It's just a JotForm application that a friend of mine made. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Are you doing year leases?
Yep. And I don't sign new leases. I just let them go month to month after that.
Okay. Mainly
from a time standpoint. I mean, I've got people that have been with me for, me personally, since I've owned the properties for 6-8 years now. I just don't see the point in going and signing a new lease every year. I mean, I understand why the bigger apartment complexes do it. Yeah. But I've not been able to justify the time. If I had a in-house property manager or hired, third-party property management, I would probably encourage them to do that, because I'm paying them. I may as well get my money's worth out of them. For my time personally, it's just not made sense to go out and sign new leases.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any, I guess, final thoughts before we move on for kind of helping somebody out in the beginning of property management?
I guess my advice would be, if you want to look into using software to manage,
Yeah.
I would start using it from the beginning. I did not do that.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah. And I'm using Excel. So I have an Excel sheet for each property, which works out great. My accountant loves it.
Yep.
But at this point, for me to switch over to something like, Cozy or Buildium, it would be fairly cumbersome.
Yeah.
So I've just chosen not to do so. As far as rent payment goes, I have switched to using ACH pulls. A lot of people are offering ACH as an option to pay rent.
Yeah.
But it's tenant initiated through like Buildium or Tenant Cloud, Cozy. Whereas what I'm doing, I went to my bank. My bank has set me up with ACH to where I can go in and pull from people's bank accounts. So it's, one pull in the first of the month. Everybody that signed up for it, it just happens, whether this sounds bad. I mean, it's pulled whether they have the money or not. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, if they don't, then they bounce and, they've got a fee on their end.
Yeah, but you don't need to worry about it.
Exactly. I mean, I just have to, I'll know within 24 hours that it didn't go. So I contact them to get it taken care of,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you get it regardless, but then you can let them know, like, hey, it just showed that the funds might have not fully been in there. I got paid regardless. So make sure that you cover your account.
Yeah. Well, they pull it, but then it bounces. Think of it as like a bad check.
Oh, okay.
So, I'll see whatever the amount is. I mean, I've only been doing it for about 4 or 5 months now, and I didn't force all my existing tenants to do it. I've probably got around 45% of my tenants signed up on it. Now
Okay.
with new leases, it's the only payment option.
For sure.
Yeah. So as time, it'll be a higher percentage of my tenants paying this way.
Yeah.
But just say it's 17 tenants and it's pulling, whatever it is. I mean, I'll just make a number up, 15 grand or whatever it is. So it'll pull 15 grand the first day on the first, but then on the second day it's going to bounce. Say I have a tenant, paying $700 a month and it bounces. Then I'll just see where my bank took $700 out of my account and it'll show the tenant's name, that it bounced.
Gotcha.
So I contact that tenant to take care of it.
Yeah. Now, does it cost you additional funds to be able to set this up?
My bank waived it. Had they not, it would have been $5 per ACH pull, or batch as they call it. So you can have, 25 tenants in a batch or whatever.
Okay.
So I actually have 3 different ACH pulls. I have a handful of tenants that are paying half on the first, half on the 15th. So, they're in batch number 1 and batch number 3. And then I also have some Social Security type income tenants.
Yeah.
That get paid on the 3rd. Okay. So I pull theirs on the 4th,
So you mentioned you have some that pay on the 1st and then the 15th.
Yeah, they pay half the rent on the 1st, half on the 15th. It's only like 4 or 5 tenants.
Okay. And what is the reason for that?
It just made it easier for them.
I never heard of that, but obviously, you figure out their situation, and then if it makes sense and you can help them out, then that's awesome.
There's a lot of people out there that like to do weekly rent.
Really? I've never heard of it.
Because they get, you're basically taking, I have one set up that way. So I was advertising the apartment for $500 a month and they wanted to do weekly. So I actually agreed to it. I probably wouldn't do another one because it's weekly rent is not fun.
Nah.
But it's 125. Yeah. 125 a week for 52 weeks is actually 13 full months worth of rent payments.
Yeah.
So that's the appeal. And there's other people out there that will do it biweekly because it's 26 payments. Me, I just don't want to have to keep up with, hey, is it their week to pay or not?
Yeah.
So basically, when I have a tenant that has had issues like paying all on the 1st, then I would split it up between the 1st and 15th to help them be more successful.
Yeah. I like that idea. I'm currently having one tenant that every month, no matter what, she's always a little bit late, and it breaks my heart. I'm always trying to figure out, you're paying late fees.
Right.
And I've waived a couple, try to help out, but then if she promises and everything and above and beyond, next month it's going to be good and then it's not, then it's I can't keep on waiving the late fees, but she's totally okay with it. And, I don't want to set her up for failure, but maybe there's a good option. I don't know. It might drive me more crazy. I got to figure this out.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely something to do. I only had a couple that were set up that way.
Okay.
Before I started offering ACH, and because I really wanted people to do ACH.
Yeah.
offer that to a couple of different tenants.
Okay.
That were kind of on the fence, because like I said, it's going to pull it on the first, whether they have their money or not.
Yeah.
So that's scary for some people. They might not have all their money on the first. So by offering the 1st and 15th, I got a couple people to sign up for ACH that probably wouldn't have. And I love the ACH. I really look forward to the day when 90% of my tenants are paying that way. And I could do that if I just wanted to force people. But one of the things that I believe when I buy a property, me buying a property that you're renting should not be a negative thing for you as the tenant,
No.
So I try and go in and make positive changes. And with that, if somebody's on a month-to-month lease when I buy a property, I'm not going to go in and make them sign a new year lease. It's not advantageous for me either to sign a year lease with somebody that I don't know anything about anyway. Other than, I do that all the time with tenants I've screened, but you've got, when you're buying a property with an inherited tenant, you've not screened that person. You don't know how it operates. So, I think you're better off just going with the month-to-month lease anyway in that case.
Yeah, no, me personally, I've bought properties before with tenants in, and thankfully not many, but it's not the best, and you can almost anticipate that. So yeah, always just assume the worst, and just acknowledge you might need to evict this person or what have you, or try to make it on a month-to-month basis. I was trying to do cash for keys to get this one guy out, and it was a triplex, luckily, so 2 units were vacant up front. I remodeled that. The back unit, it just ended up being chaos, but we finally got him out after like 2 months.
Yeah. And I've got some great inherited tenants, and I've got some, not so great stories of past inherited tenants. But
for sure,
I have 2 inherited tenants that have been in their apartments since like 94, and the other one 96, I think.
Yeah.
96 and 98. So they've been there for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
My Angola 12 unit, I still have 2 of my original tenants. Everybody else is, either I did a couple of evictions, but most of them just moved out on their own and we rehabbed the units.
Yeah.
The existing tenants that I had from when I purchased a property, they're great. They help me keep an eye on the property, and, they found several tenants for me, very, very vested in their neighborhood,
I love it. Yeah, that's so great. Those are like the cream of the crop that you're really looking for. That's awesome.
For sure.
So let's talk about creative financing. It's honestly my favorite topic. So I'd love to hear more about what the hell you're doing with creative financing and how you're getting some of these deals for damn near nothing or little to it.
So I've not bought anything like this in a couple of years. I've honestly not bought anything in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Just because of the way the market's been. And I reached a point where I knew that I was kind of, as far as I wanted to go, self-managing.
Okay.
And so I wanted to just focus on what I had and do what I'm doing now, move things around on the board.
Let me ask you, have you ever hired out for property management before? Or like as you start scaling, maybe give them 1 or 2 just to see how it goes?
I have not. And I don't know that I would, just because at this point, if I were to go out and buy a duplex or something now, it would be nothing to roll it into what I already have.
Yeah.
And the actual management of my properties is probably no more than, 6 to 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
So I probably wouldn't. Now, as we're buying commercial properties, that's something I would say that we'll definitely look at, hiring leasing agents. If not, with some of them, we'd actually have third-party property management. But even with that, I'm hoping that we can manage most of that in-house and just have the leasing agents.
Okay.
With creative finance, though, my first 3 properties, I used bank financing. The first one was a commercial building I bought it with the intention of renting it to a real estate office that I was part owner of. So I used to be a realtor.
Okay.
And so I did the normal thing. I went, and this was in 2007, I went and borrowed my home equity,
Yeah.
Down payment, renovation costs came that way. And rented the building to that business that I was part owner of. And that worked out for a while. And then eventually it just, between the market dropping off and me not being interested in that side of the business anymore, I decided to get out of that and really focus on rentals.
Okay.
So prior to that, I did buy a couple single family houses using, I call it ARV financing. So basically the bank I was working with based my loan off of the after repair value. So for the one, to get that number, I would just give my banker a list of everything that I was going to do to the house after I bought it.
Yeah.
And he would give that to the appraiser, and the appraiser came back and said, okay, this house is going to be worth, $72,000, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so the bank loaned me $54,000. I think that's 75%. And with that, I mean, the purchase price in that house was like $32,000 or $33,000. So I had roughly $20,000 left over to fix it up. So I did 2 houses like that. And then,
what kind of bank is this? I love that. Are they still offering that?
I don't know that they are.
Yeah.
We did 2 deals like that. And then we did a third one that came with a few more strings. I mean, like I think of that one, I had to go and pay for, say $3,000 worth of remodeling or whatever.
Yeah.
And then feeds to them, and they would release the funds. Whereas the first couple, I would literally just call up the bank and say, hey, take $3,000 off my line and put it in this account. And it was there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they did tighten up a little bit, but you're talking 2007, 2008, just as the subprime crash was starting to happen.
For sure.
So we're tightening up. It's quite possible you could find a bank that would offer an ARV line of credit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the bank?
That was just a small local bank, and they don't do anything out of state. I mean, I can share that information with you later if you'd like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I would think any small local bank would be open to discussing something like that.
Small local banks are honestly the best. I've dealt with so many different banks in the past, and what I realized is building the relationships with the small local ones always, they go above and beyond to keep that relationship strong. And they've waived, a lot of my closing fees over and over and over again. So it's really crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah. When they're lending for their own portfolio, they don't have to fit in the box or you don't, as the borrower, don't have to fit in the box that they would require you to fit in to do, like, Fannie Mae financing or whatever.
Yeah.
Conventional financing.
For sure.
There's definitely things they can do. And now what I do now is, we'll get to the land contract thing, but once I go to refinance my land contracts, I don't do them one at a time. We do several at a time. So like the last loan I did was we took 8 land contracts with 8 different sellers and combined them into one new bank loan. Okay. And you can't go to a mortgage broker and do that,
Yeah.
You have to work with a small bank for that kind of stuff. So after I did those couple of ARV deals, I did do a third one, and I actually flipped that one. I was a new landlord back then, and it was right before Thanksgiving. I was still a realtor. I had this misconception that, people don't rent houses in November, December. They wait till after the holidays. So I threw it on the market for sale or for rent, and it sold almost immediately at full price. So, that just kind of happened.
Yeah.
But anyway, at that point, again, the subprime crash was starting to kick in. So while I was under contract to sell that house, I actually went into my bank and I'm like, hey, I've got this house I want to buy. And I'm going to be giving you this, $54,000 or whatever it was back from this one because we're selling it. So I'd like to buy this other house, same way. And I got a no. For the first time in my life, I got a no on borrowing any kind of money from anywhere. And it was a huge ego hit.
Yeah.
So, this was the beginning of 2009. And so I stopped buying, for about close to 2 years. I just sat on the sideline and I continued to read about real estate and this and that, but it was a huge ego hit. So when I did go back into buying, I chose to go the creative route.
Yep.
And there's a lot of advantages to that. I mean, just like we said with the banks, I mean, they can kind of play with the terms. Well, when you have a private seller, you guys can set the structure up in any manner that you both agree to.
Yeah, it's all negotiable. It's awesome.
Yep. So I've done some really creative stuff. And then, with the intention of at some point, you build up the equity, and at some point you go in and you get bank financing on it. And that's what I've done on most of my deals. I only have, so I bought around 60 units on land contract, and currently I only have my 16 unit that is still on land contract and a small commercial building that I'm also coincidentally selling that on land contract. So I'm buying it on land contract, selling it on land contract.
I love it.
Yeah. So with the land contracts, I mean, how do you want to approach this? I mean, do you want to ask specific questions or?
Yeah. Well, I would love to just kind of figure out the breakdown. I guess first and foremost, like, how are you getting those leads?
Okay. So this is going to go back to, I decided to go head on into real estate. It was spring of 2011.
Yeah.
So I went to my other partners in the real estate office and I'm like, hey, I want out, So we negotiated that, worked that all out. And I immediately, started looking at small multifamily properties. There was a couple that were on the market. I ended up approaching the realtor she had a 3-unit listed in a town about 30 minutes from me.
Okay.
And with that one, we just negotiated a land contract where I think I put around $5,000 or $6,000 down. I think it was $5,000 down. And I paid a little bit less than what they were asking. And, I was responsible for taxes and insurance from day one, all that.
Yeah.
But one thing that happened at closing, it kind of clicked with me, was after the seller paid his real estate fees, he walked away with a check for like $250. So, it kind of planted a seed that, hey, had that been off market, I might have been able to buy that for $250 down. Because that's all the seller got anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of planted a seed. My next deal, so that first deal happened about 3 months after me getting out of the real estate office. And then right at the end of the year in December, we closed a deal I bought a package of 3 duplexes from a seller that had some health issues on land contract. And with that deal, we got even more creative. I think I put around $5,000 or $6,000 down on that one as well. It was a $250,000 purchase for the 3 of them. And I did offer them, because I had these 2 houses that I did with ARV financing and the commercial building. I had those on one bank loan. So I did offer this seller of these 3 duplexes a $15,000 second mortgage on those. So I gave him a piece of paper, an IOU, Yeah. So my total down payment on that property was $30,000. 15 of it was the note.
Yeah.
The other 3 properties. 6 of it was cash. And then around 9 of it was credits for prorated property taxes, prorated rents. And with that, we closed on the 8th of the month. The seller had collected rents on the 6 units. So they gave me credit for the 23 days that I would own it on paper. And then the security deposits that all the tenants had paid were transferred to me on paper. So I had around $9,000 in credits. And, so I bought $250,000 worth of real estate for $6,000 down.
I love it.
And the seed that was planted from the first deal started to grow a little because, this seller, that $6,000 didn't cover her real estate commission or her side of the closing costs.
Yeah.
So she ended up coming to the table with like $1,800, and then with an agreement to pay the rest of her real estate commission in the spring. I think it was like another $5,000 or $6,000. So that seed, from before, it grew into the thought that, hey, if this had been off market, I could have bought this property for nothing down, because it actually cost her money out of pocket to sell it. And so those 3 duplexes, along with the 3-unit I bought, took me from 4 units to 13 units, within 6 months. So the following year, I didn't do much. I just mainly focused on what I had.
Yeah.
Just dealt with that, raising some rents, so on, as we took units.
I think that's very important too, because like for somebody getting started, I know you weren't like getting started at that time, but at the same time, it was kind of the beginning stages. So I think it is very crucial for somebody like some of the listeners that when you are getting started in real estate, after you get a few of these projects, like just sell, and especially if you're self-managing, really take a little bit of time to make sure everything is running smooth and systemized. Right around 9 months to 12 months is typically how long it took me in the beginning until it started getting a lot sooner.
Yep.
So I just recommend that caution of, wait a year before you jump onto the next project in the beginning, especially if you're picking up some bigger multifamily.
Yep. Yeah. And I've definitely done that throughout this journey.
Yep.
Take a break here and there, but it all happened pretty fast. So, I mean, within a 5-year period, right at 60 months, I went from 4 units to 63 units.
I love it.
It happens pretty quick, but there were some breaks in there. So that was 2011. 2012, I ended up buying 1 duplex right at the end of the year. And that one was also listed with a realtor. I put like $3,000 or $3,500 down. So the seller actually had to come out of pocket a couple grand to make that deal, finalize.
Yeah.
And then 2013, I ended up, that was kind of my big year. I ended up adding, I added 13 units that year. And I did that while working. So it was a total of, let me think here. I bought 3 duplexes, 2 houses, and a 5-unit that year. And I did that while being mandated to work 50 to 60 hours a week in the factory I was working at. And, it was a tough year for sure. At the end of that year, sometime in the last couple months, I remember I was stuck at work on a Saturday night, and I didn't want to be there, obviously, and I started running numbers on how I could escape. I was paying a guy to mow several of my properties. So I was like, hey, if I go out and buy a trailer, I already had a commercial mower, for home.
Yeah.
If I go out and buy a trailer, I can save $150 a week, on all these mowing jobs. If I start doing this myself, so I started running the numbers, and it also hinged upon, refinancing 5 duplexes that I bought on land contract that I knew I could go and refi. So I refied those, lowered my payments, and spring of 2014, I left my job and haven't looked back. I had 28 units at that time. I think I bought a duplex right at the end of 2014, coincidentally one that I just sold last week. And then beginning of 2015, I bought my 12 unit. And then 2016, I bought another duplex, my 16 unit, and did a couple smaller deals. I think I did like 21 units that year.
I love it.
Yeah. And that's where I kind of just took the pause and focused on, now it's time to focus on getting all this stuff refied and so on. And we did that last year, refied most of it.
So I do want to talk about, where the mindset was when you just, not overnight, but you really scaled up, you jumped up pretty big out of nowhere in comparison to the amount of years that you've been in the game, where that mindset shift was. But before we dive into that, what type of properties are these? Like, I guess the area, wondering on the class, the condition of the property, and are you doing big remodels on these as you get these for like a steal?
So we should also answer the original question you asked as well.
Yeah.
Where I'm finding my deals. So up to that point, I mean, my first several deals were off the MLS because I was a realtor. That's what I knew,
Yep.
But 2013 is when things changed. I started doing, I won't say a lot of direct mail, but I was pounding, the same sellers over and over until they call me. So I was doing, very targeted direct mail. If I drive by a property or find a property on, one of the local assessor sites or Google Earth, whatever, then I would, find out who the owner is. I would mail to them, as a personal letter. And I bought several properties that way. I also did, I bought my 5 unit by sending the owner a message on Facebook.
Yeah.
And that one took like a year to develop the relationship, but I ended up getting a great deal on it. And he made good money on it as well. It was a win-win. So as far as the properties themselves, so mostly small multifamilies, I would say that they're B-class properties.
Okay.
When I buy them, and they're in decent areas. I mean, they're smaller towns. The town that I live in, the population is probably around 10,000. I would say that where my 16 unit is in Auburn, that's probably, it's a little bigger, maybe 12 to 15,000.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that. It could be even a few thousand higher than that, but I mean, it's not a whole lot bigger than Kendallville. So they are smaller towns, rural as Brandon Turner would like to say. The 3 units in a very small town, probably only 3,500, 4,500 people.
Yeah.
So, that one's been a little different as far as the tenants I attract. And that was definitely a C-class property when I bought it. My Angola 12 unit, definitely a C- when I bought it.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the tenant base was very rough. There was
getting a little violence. Yeah. A little crazy.
We had a meth lab up there.
Nice.
Just, that sort of stuff. When I bought the property, there was some sort of law enforcement up there on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Whether it be, an actual, city police officer there for whatever reason. But there was also a lot of, I probably had 3 or 4 tenants that were on probation. So there was probation officers there all the time.
Wow.
That's something that has changed. I mean, with rehabbing the units and actually screening and getting a better mix of tenants in there, it's probably about a year ago, I was up there talking to one of my original tenants that is still there, great lady. She made the comment that she can't remember the last time she saw a cop car in the parking lot. And that was just a huge testament to what we've done there,
Yeah. How difficult is it to change the class of a property and really try to manage it properly and cut out all the BS there and really start getting good tenants in there?
Well, with that particular property, it would have been a whole lot easier had I had some money.
Yeah.
But by rehabbing it out of cash flow and the cash flow from other properties, it made it a slower and longer process. So in an ideal world, if I bought that property and had, enough cash on hand to rehab the whole thing at once, I would have immediately went in there and evicted probably half the tenants right off the bat,
Yeah.
And because there is a curve, even as you start rehabbing units, when you're doing it slowly like that. I mean, we rehabbed, I think, 6 the first year. But the word isn't really out there on the street yet that it's a good place to live. It takes time. And that's actually a college town. So for a long time when I tell people, hey, I've got, a 12 unit in Angola, the misconception would be that I have a bunch of college tenants, right? Because it's a college town. And it was probably, I'm going to say 3.5, 4 years into ownership before I actually ran into my first college student, and great tenant. I mean, very professional tenant, I guess would be professional in a good way.
Yeah.
Good way to put it. But, almost immediately we were able to get good tenants as we were rehabbing these units, using Facebook marketing to show the rehab. And they were fairly extensive rehabs. I mean, still cosmetic, but,
pretty deep.
Yeah. All new exterior doors, all new interior doors, because every one of them been punched and kicked, 50 times. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the mindset shift. I think it's hard for people out there to wrap their heads around, going from, let's say X, 20 units to 60 units within a short period of time. Is there anything that kind of shifted for you, or maybe the confidence level, or just, the opportunities arrived and you could see them more? What was it?
I mean, my confidence definitely went up. I vividly remember leaving work early to go and close on the 3 duplex deal.
Yeah.
And having like a bit of a panic attack. You know what I mean?
Why is that?
Well, because it was pushing my monthly principal and interest payments up to over the $4,000 mark.
Uh-huh.
And that seemed huge at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm at around $13,500 a month now. And at the high point, I was about $16,500 a month. So that seems silly to me now to be stressed out over $4,000 a month in principal and interest payments.
Yeah.
But at that very moment, it did stress me out, Yep. So at some point, the confidence kicks in and you realize, hey, I can make all the payments in the world as long as the deals make sense and I collect the rent money,
If there's cash flow in between, I'm good. Yeah.
So I don't know that there was a specific mindset shift, but it definitely took confidence over time. When you're self-managing and you're adding 12 new tenants or 16 new tenants all at once, there's definitely some work up front that has to be done to bump yourself up to handle that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Have you had any mentors or coaches in the past that has kind of helped you along the way, or a lot of it seems like it was self-taught, just diving online?
Yeah, a lot of it was self-taught. Back before Bigger Pockets, I used to be on a real estate forum called, I think it was Creative Real Estate Online. I don't know if they're still around anymore or not.
Okay.
I used to read a lot of posts from like Ray Alcorn. He was a very creative guy. He does commercial stuff.
Yeah.
But, I just kind of scaled it down to single family and small multifamily.
For sure.
I did have a guy down the road from me who had 40 some units. He's since passed away, but he was somebody that I would contact when I'd have, questions, mostly regarding, tenant law and that kind of stuff, because he'd been there and done everything. So when I had to do my first eviction and go to court, he was the guy I called. He talked me through it and told me that they never show up. So of course, my very first one, they showed up. But yeah, so he was somebody I definitely went to as a mentor.
That's cool.
Networking, I say networking is one of my weak spots, because I didn't even attend my first RIA meeting or anything until I probably had, 40 units,
Really?
Yeah. And now I haven't missed a Fort Wayne RIA meeting. You had Drew and Adam on.
Yeah.
I've not missed a meeting there probably the last 6 or 8 months. I've involved a couple other meetups. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be somebody that likes to just do everything by myself. And then I realized it's really holding me back. The networking. And also at the time when I first got started, I did, just like yourself, all self-education, all the books, podcasts, YouTube I could get my hands on. And at 4 hours every single day, every single day for 2 years before I finally felt confident in what the hell I was doing and actually started getting some of my offers accepted. So it was kind of a process, and then a bunch of learning curves along the way as well. Even though I got a lot of the knowledge in the books, taking it out there hands-on is a whole different ballpark, whole different game. So if you could have started over and then had somebody that kind of give you a little bit more guidance along the way, do you think that would have been a better approach? Or, I mean, you're very successful at this point as well.
No, I definitely agree that it would have been more helpful. I think what I get most from networking is I have people to challenge my thinking.
Yeah.
And, and I have other people that have the same or similar goals.
Yeah.
When I worked a factory job, I would talk real estate all day long, and probably drive my coworkers nuts,
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have other people to talk to about it.
Yeah.
And so like you said, I mean, I was kind of forced because I didn't give myself that outlet to create all my own thoughts and theories on things. Whereas had I had people to lean on that were doing the same thing I wanted to do, I could have collapsed some time frames. And, one of the things that's caused some of the recent changes was I actually reached out to a guy several months ago. He owns a strip center in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
So I just reached out to him on LinkedIn to see if he'd be interested in selling it.
Yeah.
And of course he, everything's for sale, at some point. So
what's the right price? Yeah.
So we had, we had a conversation and we ended up having lunch, and this guy had done a ton of strip center deals and other types of commercial deals, just a wealth of knowledge, been there, done that. And one of the things he said to me that day was, and it was just kind of off the cuff, he's like, you should sell all of your residential stuff right now. And of course I was kind of taken aback, but between him telling me that and me kind of, mulling it around and presenting it to another friend who is a very successful guy in other realms, not just real estate. When I said it to that friend, he totally challenged me on my reason for not selling. And my reason for not selling is, I rely on these properties for income.
Yeah.
So if I sell them, I'd get a big chunk of money, but my fear was, how would I generate income off of that money while not eroding the principal? And, and it was a completely silly thought because I've created all of this from basically nothing. So, my friend, what his challenging point was, if you can go from, from nothing to, X, why couldn't you go from X to, 5X within 5 years or whatever?
Yeah.
And so what that did, because they challenged my thinking, I started looking at, what can I do with my portfolio to get better returns? And that's where I decided to sell some things to pay off some debt. And then, I'm like I said, I'm moving things around the board to increase cash flow and so on. Looking at refinancing options, things like that. So had I not been networking with people who would challenge my thinking, I wouldn't be where I'm going to be, a few months from now, or even a year or two from now.
Of course, I love that
with my current portfolio.
Yeah. It's so crucial. It really is. So surrounding yourself with those higher level people that think on a different level can challenge you and hold each other accountable as well, I think.
Right.
Because next time you see them, most likely they're going to bring it up like, hey, so whatever happened with last time, what we were talking about.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. And even though I can't bring myself to sell stuff, I sold enough of it to drastically increase my cash flow just from getting rid of bad debt.
Yeah. No, of course.
Credit cards, that sort of stuff, Yeah.
Now, have you ever thought about doing like the velocity banking strategy of taking a lot of this cash flow and just chunking down maybe each mortgage one at a time?
I think at some point I will, but at this point I've needed my cash flow to live on.
Okay.
So there's not been a lot of extra cash flow, I guess.
Okay.
As we start buying commercial properties, my hope is that I'll be able to lean more on the commercial income.
For sure.
And then that would allow me to take my personal because I'm going to be doing that with partners.
Yep.
So then that'll allow me to not pay myself from my personal portfolio,
Yep.
Use that cash flow to pay down debt. Yeah.
I love that. That's a great strategy. Very smart. Cool.
I've recently read Life in Air. Have you read this?
What is it?
The book Life in Air?
No.
It's they bring it up on the Bigger Pockets podcast a fair amount.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mix of Rich Dad Poor Dad and Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
Basically, get rid of your debts, get rid of live life more simply, because then you don't need to make as much. So I'll just give you an example. I mean, there was a time where I thought I wanted to own, say, 150 units and have, in-house property management, in-house maintenance, and have an actual office and all these moving parts to this business. And now, not just because of Life and Air, but I mean, reading Life and Air kind of reinforced my previous thoughts on this. I would rather have 60, 70 units paid off or the equivalent of that with commercial properties and have that cash flow and not so many moving parts and be able to manage everything from my living room instead of having the overhead of an office and feeling tied down to an office. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I love that. Brandon, so for any new person out there that doesn't have all the money in the world, that kind of found themselves in the same situation you and I, working almost minimum paying jobs, but trying to get into real estate on that creative side, is there any resources or advice that you would give for somebody to really get educated, to think outside the box and get like creative in real estate to be able to get that first deal?
Yeah. I mean, I would go back to networking. I mean, network with everybody.
Okay.
I bought most of my properties from landlords who wanted to retire. Maybe, they'd only have one or two properties and, they were actually at retirement age with their job and the property's paid off, or even if it has a small balance. The nice thing about buying from landlords is they're already used to letting a tenant move in with a small amount of money, their deposit.
Yep.
And they're used to getting monthly income from the property. So for them to sell on land contract, it's kind of a natural transition.
It is.
You're going to give them a small or no down payment, and then you're going to pay them monthly, Yeah. And I would hope that, of course it depends on the class of the property and everything, but I would hope that, you would come to them stronger than their average tenant. I mean, I've got excellent credit. So, probably better credit than their tenants, their average tenants.
Yeah.
So I'm a more solid, dependable paying source than their tenants would be. Plus, I'm going to take care of the property. They have no issues. At this point, I set up my payments on ACH. So, my sellers get their payments that way. But it all goes back to networking. They need to network with other landlords. They can potentially find deals that way, off market. They need to network with private lenders. I mean, that's where it's at. If you don't have any money, you're going to have to bring somebody else's money into it or buy with nothing down,
And then as far as legal paperwork, going through lawyers in your local area or networking again and utilizing some of your paperwork?
Yeah. And with the paperwork, I mean, I paid my attorney to do my land contract. I could have probably used, because he sent it to me as a Word document, I could have probably continued to use that without paying him each transaction.
Yeah.
But I continued, it was only $350. I continued to pay him for every transaction.
$350 is nothing. That's awesome. Yeah,
exactly. And I felt like I would feel like a jerk if I went to him with a land contract deal that I used a form that I'd previously paid for on another deal and filled in my own information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I took that to him and said, hey, I'm having this problem in this land contract. And oh, by the way, it's your paperwork, but you didn't.
Yeah, you didn't do it. Yeah.
So I paid him out of respect mainly for every deal. And it worked out great. Everything's worked out. I will say something on the land contracts, on the no money down thing.
Yeah.
There's so many books out there on, buying real estate with no money down.
Yep.
And to me, they never dived into the actual structure and the terms enough.
Yeah.
So I did write a small ebook, a cheap ebook.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And I'll make it, I think we talked about this. I'll make it free it's a free download for, say, the next 30 days.
I love it.
Most of your listeners should have a chance to get to that. After that, it's $5.99 through Amazon. I can email you the link.
Yeah.
But, the book is called No Money, No Problem.
Okay.
And it's subtitled something like how I bought, $1 million worth of real estate while making $14 an hour or something like that. It's bad. I don't even remember the title of my own book. But in that book, I really go into, I refer to it as more of a deal diary.
Yeah.
Go through a lot of my deals in really good detail. In the beginning, when I was buying on land contract, what I would do is, say I was going to buy a duplex for $80,000 and I wanted to write my offer in a way that would, prevent me from bringing much money to the table.
Yeah.
I would look at it and I would say, okay, I'm going to get, like $1,200 in credits for property taxes. I could kind of calculate where that would be. I would look at the leases and I would see that there was 2 security deposits for $500 a piece. So there's another $1,000 that I would get credit for. And then assuming we were going to close, the first of the month or the 8th of the month, like I said, I would calculate what I thought my rent proration would be. And if it was going to be like, the credits totaled up to like $2,800, I would write my offer that I'll put $3,000 down.
Yeah.
Asking for these credits. So then I'd be bringing, a couple $100 plus closing costs. Well, what would happen though, and again, I was broke, I say that I had, I put $3,000 down, and $5,000 down on all these other amounts in these other properties. Some of that was credit card, 0% credit card loans.
Yep.
I kind of doing some creative stuff like you were.
Yeah.
I was broke. So if I was planning on bringing a couple $100 plus my closing costs, and then all of a sudden, a week before closing, one of the tenants moves out.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm not getting that, $400 rent proration or whatever, $500 security deposit. So now I got to come up with another $900, right?
And that's happened to me before as well. Like a tenant moved out as we were in the middle of closing, and I was like, "Oh, perfect."
So now you got to come up with more money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I did to work around that, and it took me, a handful of deals to get the wording right and to really think through it. I'm just going to read something from my letter of intent.
Yeah.
And
please.
This is how I work it to where my seller walks in. I used to tell my sellers, you'll walk in with a set of keys and you'll walk out with a cash flow. They're not getting a check. They're not bringing money.
Yeah.
It's what, so this is what I wrote in my letter of intents when I make a land contract offer. The down payment is to be made up entirely from credits for prorated property taxes, prorated rent for the month closing takes place, and security deposits that you have collected from the current tenants. The land contract note amount will be the balance owed after the above credits have been subtracted. So you take your purchase price, you knock off your credits, whatever's left over, we would apply whatever we agreed to as far as an interest rate and amortization term, and we come up with a monthly payment. But the seller's side of the closing statement shows $0 brought, $0, they walk away with $0.
Yeah.
So it balances it out,
I love it.
And now, if the tenant moves out, you still get your full credits,
Yeah, that's huge. So are you doing a balloon payment at a later date or just kind of ongoing?
So they've been all over the map on what we've done, but kind of my bread and butter deal was 20-year amortization, 5-year balloon, 5% interest, Yeah. And I did a bunch of those. We did one that had a 3-year balloon. I did another one that was a 10-year land contract with no balloon. I did a couple that were 12-year amortizations. Rates have ranged from anywhere from like 2.9 on one deal up to my very first deal. I think we did an 8 or 9% interest.
Okay.
Most of them have been around 5-6%. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that whole process of negotiating, you're just taking it one piece at a time, down payment, percentage. Let's talk about this. And does it get stressful, I guess, on both sides? You guys go back and forth?
Yeah. I mean, there's been a little bit back and forth. I think with one of the things with this is, you're negotiating with your lender, quote unquote lender, and your seller at the same time.
Yeah.
The downside of doing this kind of deal is you're either going to get a great price or you're going to get great terms. You're not going to get both,
I love that. And what would you rather shoot for?
Well, when you're broke and you don't have money for down payments, you want the great terms,
Yeah.
And so I mean, I paid pretty close to retail on most of my deals.
Yeah.
But I got into them with nothing, and over time, I mean, rents go up, the properties have went up, so it's been a good situation. But with that, sometimes these deals take a long time to put together.
Yeah.
I can think of a couple where, it took about a year from the initial contact. We just kind of stay in touch and prod each other occasionally and it would happen. My best deal, my 16 unit, that one took a little over 3 years and phenomenal deal. I mean, it's a great asset. It's 4 unit buildings on one parcel. They're all 2-bedroom, bath and a half townhouses. Wow. I sent him a letter in 2013 and he called me immediately and, we chatted, kind of got to know each other. He liked the idea of selling on contract for tax reasons.
Yeah.
And, in that initial call, he told me he's not ready yet, but we'll stay in contact. And, when he's ready, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
So, we tap danced around the no and low down payment a lot the next couple of years. And I like to be upfront about it. I mean, when people ask about the down payment, I tell them, typically I put nothing down. And of course that gets mixed responses. But on this particular deal, this one's going to blow you away. He wanted $625,000 for this 16 unit. The net operating income on that property, and he was sharing numbers with me each year as they come out, and he shared previous numbers. He was averaging between $60,000 and $65,000 a year net operating income. His $625 purchase price was fair. Right at the end, a second buyer showed up. So we ended up competing. I ended up he wanted each of us to make 3 different offers, play with the interest rate, play with the down payment, play with the term, and he would kind of just weigh it out or whatever, and the price. And I made 3 offers, but the offer that he accepted was $650,000 purchase price, $1,000 down, 5.5% interest, 30-year amortization, and the balloon. It's a total 6.5-year balloon. We closed July 1st, 2016. He wanted to maximize his expenses in that year, so he paid his spring taxes, of course, because those would have already been due. He paid the fall taxes, and then at closing, he gave me a check for the spring taxes instead of a credit. He just wrote me a check. So that was like $5,500 in cash I got closing. I put $1,000 down, so I'm already, over $4,000 ahead.
Yeah.
He gave me a check at closing for all the tenant security deposits and pet fees. So it was I think it was $88.75. So $1,000 down. I got $14,000 at closing. Okay. $649,000 land contract, and it keeps getting better. Again, he wanted to maximize his expenses and lower his income in 2016 for tax reasons. So we had the first 5 months was no interest, and the first 6 months was no payments.
I love it. I love it.
And so my first payment wasn't due until January 2017.
Oh, good for you, brother. I love that.
It was great. And it gets better. We closed July 1st. So he had his property manager contact all the tenants and it's like, hey, don't pay your rent until the 7th.
Yeah.
That way I would have time to get in there and collect July rents. So that first week I collected another $8,000 in rent. So that property put a phenomenal amount of money in my pocket that first year, which I needed because we were rehabbing the aforementioned meth lab that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So it was great. But I mean, that was the deal was based on building that relationship.
That is some creative financing right there. That's the definition of creative financing. And I love how you mentioned just a few minutes ago, price or terms. You're not going to get both. So figure out which one you want. I've been telling people this for a long time that I truly do believe terms all day because you can get creative. It's all negotiable. If somebody wants $500,000 for a property or what have you, whatever number it is, but it's only worth, less than that. Are you just going to walk away from the deal? Some people get very caught up on that price, the sellers. Yep. So instead, offer them $1 million. Go above and beyond. They're going to brag to all their friends and family that they got, so much more than what it's actually worth. But then if you amortize it, over or at 0% interest for 100 years, the first payment's not due for the first 5 years or whatever, You can
do all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah.
You can do crazy things. So, there's so much power behind it.
Yeah, if I was going to do it over again, I would probably incorporate the BRRRR strategy a little more.
Yeah.
What I have done, it worked, and here I am, 5, 6, 7 years later on some of these properties. I'm not as highly leveraged as it was before.
Okay.
I had a ton of debt before, a ton of leverage, but now the properties have went up in value. I've paid debt down. So I'm probably only, 65, 68% loan to value across the whole portfolio.
Nice.
So I'm in good position now, but it was definitely not the fastest way to build that equity because most of my equity came just from paying the debt down,
Yeah.
But, the properties have appreciated a fair amount because, the 16 unit, I believe it's worth $800,000 right now. I've raised that operating income and cap rates have compressed. I mean, we're probably talking about something that some of your listeners might not follow completely there, but between cap rate compression and raising the NOI on that property, I've increased the value a fair amount, But if I was to do it again and wanted to do single family houses, to get both good terms and good price.
Yeah.
If you did the BRRRR strategy, and use private money, you could probably scale faster and be worth more than I am now with the same number of units in the same time frame,
Mm-hmm.
So, but
I agree. I love the burst strategy. That's what we focus on as well. But at the same time, tomato, everybody, it's the path that you guys went on. I think the creative strategies and the mindset behind just running your deals and what you just explained with your letter of intent, I think that is huge. I think that's going to help out so many listeners. So I'm just really grateful for that. That's awesome.
It's been a fun journey. I mean, like you said, there's 100 different ways to invest in real estate. You do what works for you.
Yep.
I like to think that I can apply some of what I've done with small multifamily with, mom and pop owned commercial.
You can
see.
Yeah.
I think I think there's some sellers out there who would go for that kind of stuff.
I love it.
And this business, if you want to become a millionaire in this business, it's really as simple as borrowing $1 million on good properties, and
there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, if you can use this strategy to leverage into several $1 million worth of real estate, you're going to get wealthy,
Oh yeah. I love it. Brandon, dude, I appreciate you so much. Like, so much great knowledge here. What can the listeners do to give back to you? You just invested all your time in pouring into them. So is there anything that we can do to give back to you?
Just go. I mean, I'm not even going to make it about me. Just go out and network with people. Build your network. And that's going to help me as well, because, the real estate community is huge, but it's so small at the same time.
It is. Yep. I was going to say exact same thing. It is. Cool. I love it. How can people get a hold of you?
I'm on Facebook, Brandon Hicks. I mean, if you just search for the city, Indiana, or check your friends list.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes as well for any of the listeners. Any other way you would prefer?
I'm on Bigger Pockets.
Okay.
So either way of those ways, if they want to email me directly, I don't know, should I give my email address?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Some people give their numbers. I think those guys are crazy, but by all means, give your email if you'd like.
Okay. So there's the email that goes along with my book is Brandon at velcapinvestmentsllc.com, and I can share that with you so you can share it in the show notes.
Cool. Yep. And then like we said, thank you so much for giving out the book for free for the next 30 days. So all the listeners, I highly encourage you to take action on that. A lot of great stuff in there, and I'm looking forward to reading it myself. So
it's a quick read. I think it's only about 60 pages. So
cool.
But it's very detailed. I mean, that was my whole goal with it.
I love it. That's what it's about. Cool. All right, Brandon. Well, I appreciate you so much, man. I really do. I know, time's our biggest asset, and you just poured in a bunch and gave away all the goodies. So I really do appreciate it. For any of the listeners out there, if you guys want to reach out to me, you can find me at BrandonElliottInvestments.com, on Instagram, Brandon Elliott Investments, and then on Facebook.com/Brandon Elliott REI. Reach out to me. Would love to connect with you guys all individually and see how we can get you started. This whole show, it's all about educating, motivating, and preparing everyone to take action out there and really crush it in real estate for yourself. Because what it's done for me and my family, I'm sure, Brandon, you can relate. It's been a huge blessing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as always, we're really dedicated to getting this content out there to more people. So jump on iTunes, hit that subscribe button so you get the newest release every single Monday, and make sure to leave a review. It just helps iTunes algorithm push it out there to more people. So appreciate you guys so much. Stay blessed, and we will see you next Monday. Brandon, thanks again, man.
Thank you. Take care.
This has been another episode of Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, brought to you by Brandon Elliott. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining. Until next